A fighter jet is flying a mission. The engine suddenly catches fire. The pilot asks the command to activate the fire suppression system, but was refused because once activated, everything would be shut down. But in order to save the pilot, command ordered him to bring the fighter down to a position 1,000 meters above the ground. Then he ejected the seat safely. The pilot began to try, but the seat latch was jammed. He couldn't move it at all. The pilot did not panic at all. He remained calm and collected. He began to look around him. He planned to make an emergency landing. Then he shut down his engines. The fighter appears to descend vertically, and this scene was just seen by a passing general. On the other side, the pilot remained unfazed. When he was only a few hundred meters from the ground, he forced the engine again. Holding on to the steering stick, the fighter's tail rises. The plane was level with the ground. The plane is about to land. The man drops the pulley, pressing the brakes hard. The fighter landed. Everyone rushes up to check it out, but the pilot was okay. He got up and looked. Apparently, the security checker didn't do a safety check before he flew. The security officer rushed up to him. The man handed him the carabiner. Didn't blame him, even intended to help him conceal it. The general on the other side arrived and did not hold the responsibility of this accident. Instead, he asked who the pilot was, because such a hot-blooded genius was exactly what he needed. The pilot's name was Kate. He was soon assigned to NASA to train with another astronaut, and then he'll go into space, the world's first spacewalk. You know, during the Cold War in the last century, the US and the Soviet Union were in a frenzied space race, and one of the most important things was the first human spacewalk. In order to get ahead of the US-1, Soviet Space Agency immediately decided to advance the spacewalk project, originally scheduled for 1967 to 1965, a full 2 years ahead of schedule, both for the engineers who built the spacecraft and the cosmonauts. It was a great test, and Kate and his partner were chosen by NASA. The astronauts chosen for this mission. Before the mission, they had to go through rigorous training every day. On this day, they were training for a parachute jump, but there was an accident on landing. Kate's partner, Pavel, had broken his left leg. The man's name was Pavel. He was an astronaut. Soon he will be joining his partner on the world's first spacewalk. Instead, he broke his left leg during a skydiving exercise. His partner, Kate, was in the hospital to see him. To help him recover quickly, Kate has added some new equipment to his traction device. It was almost done, but the next moment... In order to return to the team as soon as possible, the man continued to train with his injured leg. The doctor found out and shouted at him, but he said, Even when it rained heavily, he still did not give up. Finally, he made it back to the team, and only 120 days left before the scheduled launch date of the spacecraft. In order to ensure the successful completion of the mission, NASA had to build a total of 2 spacecraft. In the meantime, everyone was working around the clock. The daily working hours are up to 18 hours. Some people even lost their lives, but for the honor of the country, they kept going. Finally, the 2 spacecraft were successfully built. The first test flight went well, but during the landing, the technology was not mature. The ship was blown up. You know, at that time, there was no precedent for spacewalking in the world. They were just feeling their way through. No one knew what would happen next. Because of this failure, many senior management wanted to abandon the mission, even if the US gets ahead of them. It was better than sending the pilots to their deaths. But Kate and Pavel kept insisting. They had been preparing for this mission. They had been preparing for this mission for too long. The technical staff had worked too hard for it. They didn't want to let everyone's efforts go to waste. For the sake of honor, they are ready to die at any time. After their repeated pleas, the general finally agreed, and before the liftoff gold to send them off, the takeoff was very smooth. They successfully entered the space. Everything was ready. Next, they had to get out of the ship to complete the spacewalk. But unexpectedly, there was an accident after they went out. It was the first time that man walked in space. The astronauts just climbed out of the capsule. They were shocked by the sight before them.
Нахожусь на пределе шлюза. Состояние у меня отличное. Подо мной вижу облачность, море. Кавказский хребет. Вот сейчас прошу тоже. Вижу небо, вижу землю. Волга прям подо мной. работы!
Immediately after, but didn't know where to put it. Obviously, people at the time had no concept of space junk, and then Kate started to walk the mission. The first time he let go, he felt a little scared. He grabbed it back. Commands started pushing. Kate made a few adjustments, gathered the courage to gently push back, and he floated in space.
Находится в свободном плавании.
При полете космического корабля «Восход-2» впервые осуществлен выход человека.
Everyone is delighted with his feat. The command staff was also very excited. Kate's daughter was furiously shouting. But the next moment, Kate suddenly felt the pressure of the suit. The next thing she knew, the suit was expanding. Everyone's nerves were instantly on edge. The command team began to check Kate's health. They found his blood pressure, his pulse rate and body temperature were skyrocketing. Kate tried desperately to hold on to the ship, but he failed until his body stabilized. He looked at the time. Once again, he began to try to slowly climb back up. He was careful not to let up in the slightest, because he was running out of time. He could not fail this time. Luckily, he succeeded this time, but the swelling of the space belly made it impossible to bend his body, and he couldn't get his feet into the capsule first. No choice. He had to risk breaking the rules by sticking his head in first. Soon there was a problem. The hatch didn't close properly. The astronaut had to go up and do it manually, but the space inside was too small, and the suit was swelling. He couldn't turn around. He had no choice. He had to risk opening the air valve to release the pressure.
А что если мы ногу вот так ведем?
Давай, давай.
Давай, Леша. Ну.
Hatch finally closed successfully. Kate also passed out due to lack of oxygen, but his partner rescued him and brought him back, so they began to return to the journey. But the problem arose again. Due to cabin failure, the spacecraft could not control the exact landing position. This led to, they could have landed in another country. The country's secrets are likely to be leaked, but now there is no other way. They can only risk trying. The parachute opened. They landed successfully, but they don't know where they are. The hatch opens. It's freezing outside. On the other side, the command team started searching around because the signal indicated the spacecraft had successfully entered Soviet territory, but there was no way to detect its exact location until it was dark. The helicopters were running out of fuel. They had to turn back. On the other side, the two astronauts were about to freeze to death because the spacesuit is not cold-proof. Just then, they heard the roar of the helicopter. Kate grabbed her partner's hand, grabbed the flare gun with all the strength they could muster, and fired their last flare. The search and rescue helicopter finally found them. They were finally saved and finally completed their mission. This is a movie based on a true event. March 18, 1965, two Soviet cosmonauts accomplished the feat of spacewalking. They became the first people to walk in space in human history.